Psychedelics can provide us with that opportunity to unlearn at a much more rapid pace.
I mean, I think there certainly is, a sense of oneness and unity that you can and do get from psychedelics.
Awakening. Psychedelics can play the role of the awakener. A lot of spaces are not really composed of a lot of diversity when it comes to people. Like, people don't look like me, people don't look like my friends that might be Black or might be trans or might be Hispanic.
Just look around at the movement, look at the organizations, the professional organizations, the research organizations, and look at who is running those and who's in charge. Look at the race and ethnicity of the senior scientists and the lead therapists and the CEOs and the board members. And you can certainly see that it's nowhere near representative of the diversity of our country.
Despite people of color being the global majority, psychedelics trials have been limited almost exclusively to white people, led by white people, designed by white people.
The psychedelic community is still as racist as any other community, with an exception of the expanded consciousness that I indicated for earlier. It might provide greater empathy, but the way in which skin color pervades our consciousness and how it's been played out historically, you're not exempt.
Our bodies are political. Everybody wants in on, telling people how to not awaken. Think this, don't think that. Media, education has become political. So psychedelics, I think, naturally have become so.
Nothing is apolitical. To define yourself as being outside of politics generally just means that you have bought into the politics to the extent to which they benefit you, and you're ignoring the ways in which they don't benefit others. I'm an academic, and in clinical science there's long been this argument that our research should be neutral, that good science is unbiased, but the reality is that all good science in that model does is it ignores the way in which it is inherently biased. And psychedelics is no better and no different. If we are doing the work from a stance of neutrality, neutrality is a political stance.
Everything is about race. There's nothing that's not about race. Everything is about gender. Everything is about class. You can't separate any of these processes.
Well, at first I would say that in a sense we are all one. I mean, we're all made of the same stuff. We're all on the same planet. Our fates and futures are bound together. So in that sense, yes, we're all one. But at the same time, we're not all treated the same.
Race is not biological. It certainly is not genetic, but it is absolutely real when we put it in the context of a social construct that has power and then can determine people's lives.
I really feel like that saying, see no color. I don't see you as a color. I see you as a person.
Only see one race, the human race.
Once upon a time that was seen as something positive, and it never resonated well with me, because I thought, well, if you're not seeing all of me, then that's exactly right. You're not seeing all of me. Therefore, you're not seeing all of yourself.
Right. It's not like these identities that we put so much emphasis on, don't exist. They do exist, and people identify themselves through these particular categories, and so to ignore them and not address the elephant in the room, again, is problematic.
It ignores and erases aspects of a person's history.
White people, they don't think of their whiteness as one of their defining characteristics. They don't think about themselves in those terms. They're taught not to think about it from a very early age.
I'd be very curious to know who are the people that say that their psychedelic journey has nothing to do with race. And I'm be willing to bet that it's people that are relatively privileged, certainly privileged along the lines of race, but potentially privileged along many other lines as well, where they don't have marginalized identities that get that become part of the focus during their psychedelic journeys.
Whereas a person of color who's going through a psychedelic trip, right, would potentially have to deal with or to call into the center of their mind experiences that have happened to them because of their race, such as being followed while black in a store, or driving while black, for instance, or being pulled over, or heaven forbid, being shot to death by a police officer.
Because my experiences with people of color is that when they are in that healing space with psychedelic medicines, there are themes directly relevant to their marginalized identities that come forward. That their healing around painful histories around race come forward. That their healing around events that may have been race-based, where they were done harm, that's part of the work.
But not talking about race doesn't make it go away. We have to really embrace it. We have to really understand it, because that's, after all, humans created it. So we have to sort of get ourselves out of it. And one of the ways we do it is by sharing information, reading, reflecting, having deep, important conversations about it, about its history, about the processes that arose in society that gave racism the teeth that it has currently in the world, in the world today. So it would behoove the psychedelic community, I believe, to embrace these categories, if nothing more, to upend them.
Well, if we consider this idea that psychedelics in and of themselves are enough to heal the world, that if we just got everybody taking psychedelics, we would eliminate all of the major world isms, racism, classism, sexism, heterosexism, those will all go away if we all kind of came together under this psychedelic haze.
Well, I would say if that were true, then the psychedelic communities wouldn't still be racist, but they are, so clearly that doesn't work.
Having a psychedelic experience does not make you less racist, right? Because typically you're looking at your psychedelic experience through the prism of the individual.
If they go into that use with the intention of working out their own racism and working out their own biases, I think it could be really helpful. But if they're taking the psychedelics because they really want to experience the music they're listening to or connect better with their partner, there's no reason to think that it's going to just sort of automatically cure your racism.
See, our socialization is very difficult to overcome, and it doesn't get overcome because we took a substance one or two times without it specifically being our intention to heal the ways we've been pathologically socialized to believe in superiority and inferiority of other human beings.
All white people are racist. Not because they do things that are racist, but because they benefit from a racist structure put in place by their forebears, right? So that's what I'm saying. An act of commission, an act of omission, right? So guilty by association. You may not practice racism, but you benefit from by living in white skin. So we got a lot of unlearning to do, but psychedelics can provide us with that opportunity to unlearn at a much more rapid pace, and also to make that unlearning permanent. And why would that unlearning be permanent? It's because of what's happening inside the brain, right? We're rewiring circuits in the brain to produce long-lasting change.
The laws on the books might be the same, but we have a 400-year legacy of how the use of substances has been disproportionately punished for people of color and has been given a pass for white people.
Today, there's a new epidemic, smokable cocaine, otherwise known as crack.
We have a history where if you could have a kilo of powdered cocaine and you were likely to be sent home with a citation, and certainly if you served any jail time, it would be minimal. But if you took 5 little tiny pieces of cocaine and had them as crack rocks, you could get your first out of 3 strikes that gave you jail time for the rest of your life. Then you look into things like stop and frisk policies that, although in theory could be applied to anyone, we see that in reality they were applied almost 80% of the time to Black and brown people, and often to Black and brown people in neighborhoods that were highly surveilled by the police already.
I actually know some people that carry substances, I'll leave it at that, in their backpack. Some of them white, some of them Black. And the ones that are white will tell me that a police officer will actually open up the door for them in the subway when he was carrying his bicycle, versus my Black friend who has to really watch out for just carrying a joint because he'll get stopped.
It's quite clear that there are biases. There have been since, police departments were established. The laws in the country were made to bring justice to white people and injustice to people of color, and that's still happening. And you don't really have to look hard to find the evidence of that.
This is actually one of those barriers we need to overcome if we're going to really create a psychedelic movement that is encompassing all people. Because people of color in the US particularly have a lot of reasons to be afraid to engage in the psychedelic renaissance. In my opinion, the psychedelic community and organizations that are committed to advancing psychedelic medicines really should be at the forefront of these issues. And this is because, one, they owe their existence to indigenous populations around the world who brought attention to, made awareness of, gave life to, and sustained these sacred plants so that they could eventually be used in this movement.
White people who use psychedelics mostly don't suffer consequences from that. And certainly there are some people who do. But for the most part, they're fairly protected because of their race or their income or the communities that they're part of or their connections. Whereas there's a lot of people of color who are not protected in the same way, and who suffer and spend time in jail. And I think that the psychedelic movement can and should be more supportive of people of color who find themselves in this position, and working harder on the front lines to kind of roll back some of these policies. And I think they are doing some of that, but I think there could be a lot more done. And again, I think they're sort of well positioned to help in that way.
But on top of that, a psychedelic movement that claims to be based on the social justice and being welcome to all people, that it's about generating health, wellness, and healing, then that should absolutely be at the center of a movement that is reminding the world that Black people's lives matter. Our world could be greatly enhanced if those with a dominant racial identity, instead of saying psychedelics are beyond race, actually used psychedelics to heal racism. And not in the way we normally hear about it. We normally hear, well, psychedelics can be very helpful in helping people of color heal from the pain of racial events and racist experiences. But instead of that, let's flip it, where white people who we know will have implicit biases that are out of their control and out of their awareness, just like all of us have. If instead they began to use psychedelics as a deliberate attempt to heal some of the things that lead them to unknowingly perpetuate racism, to unknowingly contribute to white supremacy, and that if they were using psychedelics to help heal that, well, that is how we actually have the potential to come to a point where race is no longer a social construct with power or meaning, as well as no longer having any biological